Chapter 11. Valentine Clue. "What's the matter?" Aunt Eloise cried out when she reached the porch. Miss Armitage pointed to a fast-disappearing motorboat. "That driver nearly killed Bess!" She explained that Bess had just surfaced when the boat raced past. Either the girl in the boat had not seen Bess or had deliberately tried to hit her. "Where is Bess now?" Miss Drew asked anxiously. "Bess saw the boat heading for her and dived. There she is," Miss Armitage added as Bess once more appeared on the surface. This time she did not dive again, but swam toward the dock and pulled herself up. Miss Armitage and Aunt Eloise rushed down to her. "Are you all right?" they both inquired as she took off her mask. "Yes," Bess replied rather weakly. "But that boat sure gave me a scare." Nancy and George came up a few seconds later and were told what had happened. Nancy asked Miss Armitage to describe the boat and the driver. "The boat was the Water Witch, and it was a nice-looking speedboat," the woman replied. "Witch is a good name for it," George remarked. Miss Armitage studied Nancy and then said, "The girl in the boat looked a lot like you, only she had a hard face." Bess, George, and the Drews glanced knowingly at one another. Finally, Nancy said, "We keep hearing about that girl. Actually, she's wanted by the police. You heard about the vacation hoax, didn't you?" Miss Armitage nodded. Nancy went on, "She's the one responsible for cheating all those people. We were told she has a man partner who probably lives in New York City." Miss Armitage asked, "What is she doing up here? If the police are looking for her, it seems to me she's pretty brazen to be out on the lake and to come so close to the person who resembles her. It's my guess, Nancy, that she was trying to hurt you, but almost hit Bess instead." The girls decided not to do any more scuba diving until after the boys arrived. "We'll continue working on your mystery tomorrow," Nancy assured the woman as she drank the coffee Aunt Eloise had brought out. A short time later, the caller got up to leave. After she had gone, the others again discussed the boat episode. Nancy declared she was going to find out the name of the person who had piloted it. Bess interrupted. "Let's go see the sights this afternoon. It's a lot safer than working on a mystery." Aunt Eloise begged off, saying she had been to all the museums the summer before. "One you'll love is the Toy Museum. It's on the west side of the lake and a good distance from town." The girls thought it sounded interesting, and as soon as lunch was over, decided to drive there. They went to Cooperstown, then took Route 80 towards Springfield Center. At last they came to the old farmhouse and barn, which were now used as a toy museum. Nancy parked and the girls went inside the house. They paid their admission, then a tall, slender, affable man introduced himself as the owner and said he would take them on a tour of the place. "You understand," he said, "that nearly everything here is very old. The toys and other pieces were gathered from this general area and are anywhere from 50 to 200 years old." First they came to the dolls. Bess declared she had never seen so many altogether. There were men, women, and boy dolls made of various material and dressed in every imaginable kind of costume. Some had very pretty faces and lovely lace or embroidered dresses. Most of the boy dolls wore sailor hats and tight-fitting clothes. The amusing ones had grotesque faces, others were happy clowns. Also on display were many kinds of buggies and other vehicles in which children had given their dolls rides. Bess whispered to Nancy and George, "I don't see anything as beautiful as the child's Russian coach must be." Another room contained mechanical toys, and another a complete antique train set which whizzed around corners and under mountains. Finally they came to the room containing old books. The trio was amused by pictures of little girls in pantaloons with disproportionate bodies. Bess mentioned this to the owner. He laughed. "Nobody knows the reason for this strange period in art. All old-time pictures of children were the same. The bodies always look stumpy and the head much too large. You'll even find this to be true in fine antique gallery paintings, even those depicting angels." While he was speaking, Nancy was looking up at a shelf on which stood a row of valentines. They looked old and were very fancy, with their imitation lace paper covers and pictures of hearts and cupids. Suddenly, something special about one Valentine caught Nancy's eye. In the elaborate scrollwork on the cover, she could detect a name. It looked like Maud Jason. Excited, Nancy asked the owner if he would mind getting it down to let her see it more closely. She nudged Bess and George and traced the name when the man was not looking. The cousins were startled. Could this be the same Maud Jason involved in the mystery of the missing child's royal coach? Nancy carefully opened the letter type, Valentine. Inside, written in precise, old-fashioned script, was a message evidently intended for Maud Jason. It read, "Ever faithful to thee, and the memory of the little lass, her lovely pony coach, lying 'neath the glimmer glass, N backward C, E, 5R. The girls could hardly refrain from exclaiming aloud. Here was a wonderful clue to the mystery they were trying to solve. As nonchalantly as she could, Nancy asked the owner, "Is this for sale?" The man smiled. "Not really. I need it for my museum. But," he added with a grin, "if somebody offered me a really good price for the Valentine, I might sell it." His eyes twinkled as he waited for an answer. "I don't know what to offer you, but I'd like very much to have it," Nancy told him, naming a price. The owner replied, "It's worth much more than that." Nancy made a second bid. She was trying to guess how much money the three girls had among them. "Tell you what, young lady," he said. "Add another 10 and we'll call it a sale." Nancy was relieved. She only had a little more than that with her. The amount seemed like a lot of money to pay for one Valentine. Still, she was sure the clue it contained about the child's royal coach was well worth the price. "I'll take it," she said. As soon as the Valentine was wrapped, the three girls thanked the owner for the tour and said they must go. "Oh, I have lots more to show you," the man said, surprised. Nancy promised they would all come back sometime, but right now they had an important errand to do and must leave. When they were in the car, Bess asked, "What's on your mind, Nancy?" "To hurry to Miss Armitage's and show her this Valentine. Maybe she can decipher the code message. I'm intrigued by the N and the E with the backward C in between." When they reached her home, Miss Armitage greeted the girls warmly. "Wait until you see what Nancy has to show you," Bess exclaimed. As soon as Miss Armitage saw the Valentine, tears came into her eyes. Nancy asked her if she could translate the letters and numbers on it. The woman studied them a few minutes, then said, "I can't help you with the names on the left, but I'm sure the letter R stands for Robert. He was the houseman for the Russian lady whose little girl died. Robert was very much in love with Maud Jason and asked her over and over to marry him, but she always refused. We don't know why. Neither of them ever married." Miss Armitage and the girls studied the other symbols for nearly half an hour, making many guesses but reaching no conclusions. Bess looked at her watch. "We must go," she exclaimed. "The boys will be arriving any time." Nancy said, "Miss Armitage, I suppose this Valentine should become your property, but may I keep it for a while to see if I can figure out these other symbols? I'm sure there's a clue in it that will help us find the child's coach." "Please take it," the woman said, "and good luck." The girls had barely reached Bide-A-Wee, washed their hands, and combed their hair when the weekend visitors arrived. Ned, tall and attractive-looking, was first. Behind him was Dave, blond and with a rangy build. Back of him came Bert, blond, short, and husky. Following him was a very handsome, distinguished-looking man about Aunt Eloise's age. The three boys kissed their friends and also Aunt Eloise, whom they knew well. Then Bert turned and said, "Miss Drew, I'd like to present my uncle, Professor Matthew Bronson, B.S., M.A., Ph.D. He's going to be teaching chemistry at Emerson this fall. Uncle Matt, meet Nancy Drew and Bess Marvin and George Fane." The professor smiled broadly, shook hands with everyone, and said, "Bert has given me a long, frightening title. Please forget I'm a professor and call me Matt." He carried a suitcase with him, so Aunt Eloise and the girls assumed he planned to stay. As if reading their thoughts, he said, "The boys insisted that I come down and meet you. I know you're crowded here, so later I'll go back into Cooperstown to a hotel." Aunt Eloise gave him a big smile. "Matt, you'll do nothing of the sort. We have this extra cot on the porch. It can either be moved into the boys' room, or you can sleep out here if you wish. In any case, do stay." "I'd enjoy the fresh air," the professor replied. "And how beautiful the view is. The bay is like a mirror." Miss Drew nodded. "We'd like to eat out here and watch the changing scenes on the water. I'm sure you'll enjoy them too." "I couldn't refuse such a hospitable invitation," Matt said, giving his hostess a warm, friendly look, which made Miss Drew blush. Bess turned to look at Nancy and George. They knew she was thinking, "Is a romance coming up?"